Hi again. Black and white because I was too lazy to do makeup this afternoon. I figured I was going to go ahead and get another video done. Right now, I've got notes beside me this time. This video I'm going to keep a bit shorter than my last one, and I want to talk specifically about red flags. I touched on it a little bit in my last video. Please, if you haven't seen it, go back and check that one out. But as I mentioned, we hear all the time, watch out for red flags. But who knows what that really means, right? Everyone has their own idea of what a red flag is. My idea of what red flags are won't necessarily coincide with 10, 15, 20 other people that you ask. And that's okay, but it's also one of the reasons that we need to talk about red flags and what they mean to each of us so that each individual can make their own decisions on what red flags they're going to pay attention to. The first thing, the biggest thing I'm going to say is trust your intuition. A lot of us know whether our intuition has been proven correct or not in the past. And especially if your intuition has been proven correct, listen to it. Please listen to it. There have been many times that I don't know if things would have been bad or not, but I listened to my intuition when alarm bells pinged and I was able to get out of the situation safely. Would I have been fine otherwise? Perhaps, perhaps not, and I'd rather not find out. In this internet day and age of meeting a lot of people online, perhaps meeting them on FetLife, the way that somebody messages you can speak volumes on what red flags are, or it can speak volumes on their personality type and potentially show you red flags. So one thing that I always pay attention to is, are the people messaging me asking me if I'm interested in becoming their friend or in a relationship or whatever, or are they writing me into their fantasies? Example, hi, you seem pretty cool. I was hoping to get to know you better. That's a perfectly acceptable way to message me. It's a perfectly acceptable way to really message anyone. Whether I want to continue correspondence is up to me. And it's not like anything, like there's no pressure. There's no like weird expectations. There's nothing in the message that can really raise a red flag. Whether you you have something written on your profile about messaging you or not messaging you, that in and of itself could raise red flags. Do you tell people not to message you unless they've followed a certain steps? Or I want to make sure you read my profile, so make sure you include your favorite color in the message, something like that. If they didn't read that, then you know that they aren't paying attention, and it might not even be a red flag, but you can just, you know you already don't want to waste your time. However, something that would be really inappropriate is messaging a stranger and just making a bunch of assumptions about that person and writing the story, or writing the person that they don't know, writing the stranger a story as though they're already in a relationship. I am on my phone only, or else I would pull up an example. I might include it in the description. I do have a tendency to put amusing and inappropriate messages that I get on FetLife in my writing section. So if you have an account, I'm Reverend Pixie Dust there, and you can laugh at some people that were really obnoxious. But for the sake of argument, my account says that I'm a switch. So somebody who messages me and automatically assumes that we're going to end up in a DS relationship in which I'm the sub, red flag. If somebody writes an elaborate story, I keep saying stories, but I've gotten messages in which the author wrote this elaborate story about some encounter that we have in his head, and I don't know this person. Never met this person before. Don't know any mutual friends. Like, there's no reason that they should come to me and write this story about what encounter we might have or this relationship that we might have, because we've literally never spoken before. I do find these messages amusing. To be perfectly honest, I laugh at them. Like I said, I copy and paste them and post them. But they're very inappropriate. They are very, very, very heavy red flags. I will not entertain those messages because it's nothing respectful. It's nothing acknowledging me as a person. It is me as a fantasy. And sure, I'm goth, I'm kinky, I'm a model, I may be your fantasy, but really, I'm a person. I am just a person. There's really nothing that special about me. Some people would probably beg to differ, but really, like, I don't know what your fantasy is about me, but whatever it is, that's not who I am. And that's something that a lot of abusers don't really understand, because they want this very specific fantasy and they want you to fill a role. Also, a lot of people have the tendency and the habit in a new relationship to take on the traits of their new partner, or to do things the way that they think their new partner wants them done. And in doing that, they kind of don't really show their true selves, and kind of lead their new partner to believe that they're somebody they aren't. And this could be as simple as, oh, hey, that band that you really, really like, sure, I really, really like them too, when in actuality you think they're okay. Or, oh, I hate that genre of music just like you do, when in actuality you like it. It could be something that simple. It could be way bigger. It could be something more like, oh, that thing you're really into kink-wise, I'm really into it too, and actually you hate it. That's a really bad habit to get into. Try to figure out what you're okay with, what you really like, and be honest. If you don't know, say that. If you're willing to try it, say that. And come back later and be honest about what's what, because we should be doing everything we can to prevent getting ourselves into sketchy situations. That's not to say that That's not to say an abuser can't still take advantage of us, but we need to be intelligent and try to make sure that things that we do aren't encouraging abusive behavior. Obviously, from somebody who's already an abuser, because somebody who's not isn't going to take advantage of that situation. On a similar note, pushing boundaries, this could be something as simple as, online, hey, please don't say that thing to me. Please don't call me that thing. Please don't assume that I'm this thing. And they do it anyway. Red flag, don't meet the person, walk the fuck away, because that's already pushing your boundaries, and they're pushing your boundaries online. So it's pretty safe to assume that in person, they would push your boundaries. Your boundaries can also be things in person where you're like, hey, I'm okay with X, but I'm not okay with Y, and they try to jump to Y. I will give you kind of an example. I'm trying not to be too like explicit or graphic about anything kink related, because I'm still trying to figure out YouTube standards and things. And I don't want anyone to take an example and think about that story very specifically. I want you to think in general terms, because there are levels to all of these issues. They can be a really light pushing of boundaries. Like I said, hey, please don't call me this thing, and they do it anyway. Or it could be something bigger, like, hey, you know, in this scene, you cannot touch my erogenous zones. And they do. That's a huge problem. You also can set hard and soft limits. Soft limits can be things that you don't really like, but you might do for someone if there's adequate incentive or if they really like it. And those are things that can't just be done on a whim. They are very specifically done in certain situations that you are okay with, and your partner needs to make sure you're okay with them when those lines are crossed. Hard limits or hard boundaries, you don't cross, ever. You don't talk about crossing them. If you set a boundary, a hard limit, and you think you might want to change its status from hard limit to soft limit, or somewhere in between, or under a certain set of circumstances you think you might be okay with it, that's fine. Your limits don't have to be static. They can change as you evolve and your relationship evolves. But at the same time, if I set a limit, if I set a hard limit and my partner pushes that line, that's already problematic. That is a huge red flag. Your partner can never initiate pushing a hard limit. You can initiate changing it. I can initiate changing my hard limits. I can say, hey, I want to play with this idea. I want to try this thing that I have previously told you is completely off limits, that it's a hard line. My partner cannot come to me and go, hey, so that hard limit, let's fuck around with that. Let's do something with it. That's not okay. That is not okay at all. And similarly, not taking no for an answer is always a red flag. There is never well, let me rephrase since we are talking kink related. Not taking red for an answer sometimes can also be problematic, or sometimes can be more problematic. I found that there are definitely times where if I'm not in a relationship with somebody and they're not listening to the way that I'm responding to them, I'll just be like, red on this conversation. I'm done. We aren't continuing this conversation. And it's okay to use your safe words. Again, I use red, yellow, and green. It's okay to use your safe words in non-scene related instances. Because sometimes people won't listen to no. And that is a huge red flag unless you are in a predetermined situation in which no does not mean stop. However, that said, sometimes saying red, for instance, in a conversation, can at least get you out of that situation so it doesn't get worse. Things to keep in mind. My last bullet point is, my last bullet point that I bothered to write down and wanted to discuss this evening is asking a stranger super personal questions. So, like, going back to that, hey, you seem like a pretty cool person, I want to get to know you better message. And if we start talking and, like, almost instantly they start asking me really explicit details about my life or my body or my kinks or whatever, like super personal stuff, that's a red flag as well. Because that tells me they're not willing to take the time to get to know me. They want information for some reason. And unfortunately, a lot of times that people will want weirdly intimate information is to take it and try to use it to abuse you. For instance, somebody who doesn't know me and is just like, hey, I'm into Stockholm Syndrome, I'm going to go, that's a huge red flag because I gave you no indication that that was one of my interests. I gave you no indication that we were going to play. And that's a very risky kink. So in and of itself, like, that is a hard limit for me. But bringing it up to a stranger is super inappropriate. So on a similar note of, like, asking you really personal, intimate questions, if they give you weirdly specific, super intimate details about themselves, that's also a red flag. And sometimes that stuff is true and sometimes it's not. While I'm discussing this, it popped into my head, so I'll give one more bullet point before I go. People who are weirdly interested in your mental illness, your physical illness, this could be something like fibromyalgia or like depression, anxiety, eating disorders. Anybody who's weirdly interested in any, quote, abnormality that you have, or anything that makes you appear kind of like weaker. I don't like putting it that way because I don't see people with chronic illness as being weak. But a lot of abusers will take that information and prey on it. So I know specific instances in which someone was weirdly interested in someone's fibromyalgia or someone's eating disorder or somebody's mental illnesses, and used that to try to control them and coerce them into certain scenarios. So that's something to keep in mind as well. If you have any questions or comments, leave them below in the comment section. Click like, subscribe, and what red flags do you look for? What red flags do you think I missed? What red flags are you really glad I brought up? let me know. I love hearing from everyone, and if I get a list of enough new red flags that I missed in this video, I will likely do another one, because this is a really important discussion that I feel like people aren't having. So, see you next time.